Like I was so fascinated by the impossibility because like in a marathon you could quit. That's very easy to quit. I wanted a challenge that was like so hard that you had to overcome. There was no exit. Like I wanted overcoming to be the only option.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm your host, Chris Noggle, and today's show is going to be epic. Not just epic for the accomplishments of my guest, but epic because you, as the listener, have the chance to change people's lives. You literally have the chance to change lives across the entire world. And I'm hoping you're going to do that because today's ask is one you have to participate in. But Katie is my guest, and Katie has done some amazing things. Let me just point out a few. I know you already heard these, but come on, you can't hear them too many times. She was the youngest person to ever row across the Atlantic Ocean. So we're going to get into what the heck ever goes across your mind to make you say, hey, I'm going to row across the ocean today. Second, 5 Ironman triathlons, cycling across America. Why not go for a run, for 341 miles? And then not only that, let's just swim down a river. 320 miles. I mean, these are just some of the accomplishments on top of being an author for her book, which we're going to definitely hit, that says, Just Keep Rowing. Katie, what an honor. Thanks for joining.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So before we get into all these things, because, anybody can Google your name and see everything you've done, let's just get down to what I want to know. And that is, who is Katie and what was your upbringing like? So let's start like at the beginning, that you can remember when you were a young girl. What was life like?
Yeah. So I was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio, and I was always keeping up with the boys because I have 2 older brothers and then all their friends would come over. So whether that was like night tag or climbing trees or whatever, but I think that definitely shaped who I am today. Just constantly, wanting to keep up with and have fun with all the other people that can do things that are a few years older. And so I am currently in Maine. I'm in the Coast Guard here, but for most of my life, I spent it in Cleveland, Ohio.
Gosh, just below where I grew up, or where I'm at still, Buffalo, New York. So I could drive down to Ohio, and I've been to Maine a whole bunch of times. I used to be a pro snowboarder. So back in the days, like there was a ton of contests over there that we would go to. It's just spectacular and beautiful there. So I'm sure you enjoy that every day. And the lobster's not bad. Just saying. So like you were trying to always keep up with the boys and everything else, but let's dive a little deeper into that. Like, was it a competitive thing? Was it just that was your surrounding? I mean, like when you say keep up with the boys, what were you guys doing that was like real? Because I mean, listen, not everybody just all of a sudden has an epiphany and says, I'm going to do the things you've done. So there had to be something that made you different than everybody else. When did you start realizing like you were going to do massive things?
My journey to endurance really started on the bench. I did all the team sports, basketball, baseball, soccer, volleyball, anything with a field and a court, I tried. And I will say that I was definitely there physically, but mentally, I was just like, as a young kid, I'd be out, picking dandelions. I didn't really care that much. And once it started getting competitive, I actually kind of checked out when like parents would be yelling, and I was there for fun and friends. And so it also didn't really pique my curiosity. Like team sports are very much win, lose, tie, and endurance is all about defining and discovering possibility. What is our human potential? And so chasing the unknown of that is very appealing for me. But I once you sit on the bench for all these team sports for long enough, you start to believe that you belong there. So in my mind, I just wasn't athletic. I didn't have that gene. And so I had to take a required physical education class to get my high school diploma. And I was like doing everything to get out of it. I was trying to get a doctor's note that I was, I didn't need it. I tried to see if I could write a paper about the benefits of physical activity. And so when forced to do this class that I didn't want to do, I tried to find the easiest class and put in the least amount of effort. So I found a walk, jog, run class, and I'm like, I'm going to walk as slow. I don't want to be here. I was very frustrated. And I mean, it's, to me, looking back, it's like, how many times do we do this thing where we resist the very thing that we're supposed to do? And sometimes the thing we resist the most is the thing we really, really should do. So I, through that running class, being forced to be there, I got really bored by walking, lap after lap. And so I just got curious one day and was like, if I actually tried, is it physically possible? Can I actually run 1 mile straight? And that was not anything I had tried. And I mean, I didn't have this belief of course I can. It was just like, we'll find out. And I didn't have pressure. I wasn't going to let down my coach. I wasn't going to let down teammates, whether or not I could or couldn't, and no one cared. So I felt like that freedom of just exploration of your body, like, oh, okay, let's see what happens. And so there definitely wasn't a Nike moment. I didn't have a runner's high. It wasn't graceful. My approach was, I didn't know what I was doing. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try to run as fast as I possibly can because I want to get it over with. And I don't know how many minutes I will last. And so I was able to run a mile. And, people describe 1 mile runs and they're like, they always add that word just. But for me, just 1 mile was just enough for me to rediscover, what's possible. We oftentimes do that thing where we have these stories in our minds, what's possible with what's not possible, and we don't even test them. And, on the other end, I wouldn't have run, like I've done 100-mile runs for over 24 hours, runs longer than 100 miles and that kind of thing. And I think the hardest mile, even if I run hundreds more, is that first one, because I had a mountain of doubt just resting on my shoulders. And like with every mile, it gives you confidence to continue on. And so I'm all about celebrating those small victories and really just appreciating your body and having a open mind and curiosity, like a kid like wonder, like, wow, could I do this? Could I do that? And I think that will be the story of my life until I die. I mean, right now I was like, oh, can I do the Navy SEAL fitness test? And so that's, there's just so many ways that our body can be used. So why not try them all? Kind of.
I love it. A lot of people play team sports and other things, it's a team thing, but everything you're doing, even like for me, I can relate tremendously because as a snowboarder, even though we had teams, it wasn't the team, it was you against you.
Yes.
Or maybe you against the other athletes, and you can relate to some of the triathlons and the Ironmans that you did, but you're always fighting you. You're always your own, worst enemy, your own worst critic, and your own, I'm trying to think what the word is, but you can be the one that's going to make it or win or fail. It's
like you are your greatest limitation. And once you do events like this, you start to take ownership that, for me, it wasn't about the coach not putting me in. It was me not giving myself a chance to try and me not putting myself on the fields. Like even with doing these challenges, I do hear things, and a lot of times it's like, oh, I could never do that. And, my answer is always, well, I thought that too. And just because you think you can't do something doesn't mean it's right. I also ask, have you tried? Oh, I can't run a marathon. Oh, have you tried? No. Mm-hmm. Well, no one's run marathons without trying to. Like, I don't know. I just love just pushing all those doubts right back and being like, hey, maybe we should challenge those thoughts instead of carrying I can'ts and carrying around language that is very, you're just self-defeating, I guess.
I think a lot of that, Katie, comes from just society as a whole. I think in society, I have a 2-year-old daughter and I watch her intently. There is not one thing that happens in any part of her day that isn't possible. It doesn't matter what it is. It's possible to her. She has no limitations. And you were the same. I was the same. up to a certain point. And that certain point typically comes when people start telling us we can't. You can't do that. That's a silly idea. Like the movie Pursuit of Happiness, when Will, Smith tells his son, his son wants to be a pro basketball player, and he says that's not going to happen, or something to that extent. And then he thinks about it and he says,
don't ever let somebody tell you you can't do something. Not even me.
I cry every time I see that. It shows my soft side. But something happens in life where all of a sudden we start believing the lies. We start conforming to other people's failed realities, other people's failed dreams, and other people's failed destinies. And I hate to say that, but I love the fact that you have a message, and your message has so much more than just you challenging yourself. Now, your whole thing is about solving other people's problems, which we're going to get to. But the most important thing is that you fail to let anything be impossible. It doesn't matter what they tell you. I mean, you do. Come on. Every single person, if you were to go around, you could say, and you just went up to them and you said, you should row across the Atlantic Ocean. They would say that's impossible. And then you could say, no, it's not. I did it. And you could say, you should swim 325 miles. And they'd say, there's no way I could ever do that. And you say, why? I did it. But the best part, and I'm so glad you said this, is it began with a 1 mile walk, which turned into maybe a run, which turned in, I just want to get this over. Can I get this done faster? And that unlocked the 1 mile barrier.
For sure. Yeah.
Katie, I'm going to go to specifically the river run. Okay. What year did you swim 325 miles down river, and what river was it specifically?
So this was the Allegheny River. And
oh my God, I love that river.
Yeah, it ended in the Point, but this was over maybe a decade, but okay. I'm doing them all the time. My latest big challenge was running the most consecutive ultramarathon distance in a row, like a Guinness record for running 11 ultra marathons in 11 days. So 50K.
Wait, hold on. You missed the most important thing. It's not just 11 ultra marathons in 11 days. It's to fund 11 water projects. That's the reason. That's your why. Forget the stupid runs and that's good. 11 days, piece of cake for you.
Yes.
It's the why. You wouldn't do that if it wasn't for the why.
Truthfully, the world doesn't need more people running and swimming and biking, but the world definitely does need access to clean water. And it's crazy to think that, it's probably 800 million people, 1 in 8 people don't have clean water to drink. And what's most mind-boggling is there are solutions. It's not like an uncurable thing. There are proven solutions that are often very cost effective. So it's hard not to want to do something about a problem that has a solution, but just might need more funding or more awareness. So that campaign, and through all the different challenges, it's about 50,000 people who won't have to worry about drinking dirty water in Central America, South America, Africa, and parts of India.
We just take it so granted here. I mean, I just think this country, it's the greatest country on earth, but we've just taken things for granted. We've gotten weak. We've gotten weak because we have. And we fail to look at the have-nots, and we don't really care because we have, and we live in this little box. But you've realized this probably because you've been to these areas and you've seen it, and you said, "What? How can this be? This is 2022. How can you not have clean drinking water?" It's because there isn't enough Katies to help change that.
I believe that people are generally trying the best, and we are inundated with opportunities to give and contribute, and so water is definitely my thing, and my encouragement would be just to really go and give for whatever that is, your cause. I mean, the world has so many problems, and we can help and be a solution to so many of them. If you care about environment, water is helpful. If you care about education, kids aren't going to school because they're fetching water, or they're too sick because they're drinking dirty water. If you care about women's empowerment, women can create businesses and do other things instead of collect water all day. If you care about health, half of the hospital beds in the world are filled because of unclean water. So that is what's great about water, is if you care about any of those issues, that's really the first step out of a life of poverty. And it is very effective. It's nice, like, seeing how far, like, every $1 invested brings $12 back to their local economies. So it's a huge impact, and that is, understated.
Folks, I want to transition here real quick, and I want to talk to the audience specifically. I want you to just listen to me. Please just stop whatever you're doing and listen to me right here and right now. In the description of this podcast is a link, and it's a link for H2O for Life. I do this all the time. I love giving because it is a law of wealth. You are all on your missions and journeys and whatever you're doing in life for one reason or the other, but you're all trying to make money and become wealthy. Let's not candy coat that. You cannot get to that goal if you don't follow the laws of wealth. And I'm specifically referring to the fifth law of wealth. What I just told you to stop for 2 seconds and listen to, H2O for Life, fulfills the fifth law of wealth. And that is, you have to solve other people's problems, which means you have to give. And you have to give unconditionally with no expectation of a return, no matter what. So just for 2 seconds, please go to the description, click the link, give anything you have. A lot of people, when they donate, they think, oh, I don't have any money, I got to give a lot. Give $1. Give $1. Give 5, give 10, give whatever your heart says. Don't give more than your heart says, but don't give less than your heart says. There isn't a right amount. There's only giving. When you have to answer someday to God or whatever religion you believe in, that's going to be one of the things you're measured by, is how much you gave, not what you had, not what you did, not what you made, not what you drove, what you did to solve other people's problems. So Katie, I'm sorry, I just had to take a second. So folks, please take that serious. The most powerful thing you can ever do in your life is that right there. And you should do more of it. All right, let's dive back in. So I want to stick on this water thing. Okay, because you've done a lot with water. You've got, the 11 and 11, 11, everything you're doing is for clean water. So I've been infatuated with water since I was a child. I recently just moved to a development. It's a development that I've always admired. It's a development I've always dreamed of living in, to be quite frank. When I was a teenager, in the middle of this development, it's a private community. There's a lake. It's an old rock quarry. And there's stories of back when they were digging this, a steam shovel was digging and it struck a spring. And overnight, it filled this quarry up. And now it's called Spalding Lake. And I'd always dream of swimming in this lake. I don't know why. I'm infatuated with clean water. Now, if you know anything about rock quarries, it's some of the most crystal clear, beautiful water you will ever see. That of which the movies and the different things you see where the water you could see down 30, 40 feet. That's this lake. Just this summer is the first summer I've been in this development. And I remember going out there one day. I thought the water was going to be too cold to swim, and I dipped my toe and it wasn't. I dove in. Now, this is a lake. It's not huge, nothing like what you swim across, but to me, it was a long way across. And I had this goal. I'm going to swim across this thing. I don't know why. Probably because there's a cliff across it and I wanted to jump off of it, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
I began trying to swim across this lake, and every time I'd get halfway and I'd look back at the dock where I started, and I'm like, oh, it's a long way, I'm tired. And I'd turn around and I'd go back. And then I'd get a little further. One day I did the craziest thing. I got 3/4 of the way across and I just decided, holy cow, I'm tired. What if all those thoughts go through your head. So I turned left and I started swimming to the other side because it just seemed like a shorter distance. And I got almost all the way to that side. And I looked back at the dock and I had that feeling, that fear. Oh my God, I got to turn back. And I did. I literally did a diamond. But there was a day where I made it across the lake. And I have swam across that lake almost every day, unless it's, pouring rain or thunderstorms. But there was many times where I tried getting across it that I didn't because of false beliefs in my mind. And all I needed to do was just push just a little harder to make it across it. Now I made it across it. Now it's so easy for me. But it wasn't that it wasn't easy the first time I started. It was my mental state. It was the fear that wasn't even real and everything in my mind. Now, that's just a little lake that I swam across. Nothing. Okay. But to me, it's a major goal, like just a monumental feat. My lake swim is your 1 mile. How is it that you went from going a mile and running it to unlocking something that now has just led to just some of the most amazing things that anyone can do Where do
Yeah.
you start when you say, I'm going to swim 325 miles down a river? Like, where does that even begin to become a reality?
So after doing my first 1 mile run, then the next natural step is, okay, can I do 2? Can I do 3? Once I got to double digits, that's when I was like, whoa, maybe I could do a marathon. And I didn't know anyone who did a marathon. I thought it was only Kenyans. And the whole story of the marathon is someone delivered a message and then died. And now we're all going to do it and not die. Like, so I didn't know much about it. And when I did the race and I trained for it, I saw people that I thought looked like me. In my mind, you had to be almost like skeletal, and so they were all shapes and sizes, they're all paces. And so it made me realize that it's not endurance, and all these challenges aren't just this physical thing. There's a real mental thing that's happening. And that's what I got encouraged by the other people who showed up despite, their bodies not being what society would call a runner's body. And so that first marathon, I actually did want to do an Ironman, but I was like, well, maybe I should do some more biking. And I was looking at biking events, and the American Lung Association had this biker across America, and my grandma had just passed away from lung disease. She gave smoking the day I was born as her first granddaughter. And so I was like, don't have a bike, don't know what I'm doing. I know I got to do this, because it was just like marrying those two things. And when I did that, it wasn't like it is today, where, every event you can usually have a charity component. So I had to learn what that meant. Like, how do you do that? Well, how are people going to give? Why? And how does that all work? And so the row is probably the one that's like furthest from anything else. And what happened was, I was going to school in Australia. I did my first ultra marathon, 100 kilometers or 62-mile run. And, I didn't know if I could do it. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with failing. I'm not okay with not trying. So after doing that challenge and many challenges, it's almost like an awakening, or like if you had bad vision and things are getting more clear, like it's like, wow. And so I did that for that first ultra, didn't really think I could do it. And I had this growing sense of possibility. And so I was on a bus, just talking to someone sitting next to me. We get on the topic of endurance challenges, and I'm a know-it-all at that point. I'm, a punk kid, and I'm just saying like, oh, I know exactly what you're going to say. Sailing around the world, cycling around the world, climbing Mount Everest. I know all the endurance challenges. And that's when he said his friend had rowed across the Atlantic. And I was like, wait, what? Like a rowboat? Like, are you not a sailboat? Like, there was no sail. I didn't even believe him. I was like, no, how? Like that, how? It just blew my mind. And I found myself Googling, and then that turned into emailing. And then that turned into, my mind was already there. Like, I was so fascinated by the impossibility, because like in a marathon you could quit. That's very easy to quit. I wanted a challenge that was like so hard that you had to overcome. There was no exit. Like, I wanted overcoming to be the only option. Overcome or die. Like, I don't know what was going on in my head and heart, but like there was a draw for wanting to see how far we could go. And so I ignored it. Obviously, I was like, this is crazy. I don't want to die. I don't know how to row. I don't have money. I'm a broke college kid. No one, my family doesn't want me to do it. My friends don't, they love me, so they don't want me to be shark bait. So I stuffed it down. I ignored it. And I realized that if I didn't do it, yes, I could ignore it and life could go on. But then I would have to, at a certain point in my life, face regret. Like, it might not be a day, a week, a month, a year. It might take until I'm on my deathbed, but like I could not live life with such a regret of like, you know, looking back at your life and wondering what it could have been if you did the thing that you were called to do, if you lived the life you were meant to, if you listened to the call. And so you know, I was reluctant, I was hesitant, but I knew that I couldn't live a life of regret. And I knew that anything could become pattern, anything could be habit. So if you start doing that, it makes it easier to do that. And I didn't want to snowball into a life of ignoring and denying and pretending I didn't want certain things. And so it was definitely a huge leap of faith. The only other American woman who had done it was an Olympic rower, and it took her 3 tries. And so I didn't even ask her for advice because I was like, you're just going to tell me not to do it because I don't know anything about rowing when I'm not an Olympian and I'm a bench warmer. So it was a huge leap of faith, but I knew there was something in me. And really, it's a lot to do with curiosity. And I think, you know, the word calling can mean different things to different people, but I think what you're called to do shouldn't feel like a mystery. It should feel like an intuitive, what do you wonder about, what are you curious about, and what excites you, what lights you up. That's what the row was doing for me. And most of the challenges, that's a similar thread: the curiosity, the wonder, the excitement. I will admit that once I do a challenge, I've checked the curiosity box. I know I can do it. So it's usually like, okay, what else? And so that's another part of, you know, why I'm running and rowing all these crazy long distances and what's going on in my head. But I mean, like when you were saying about swimming across the lake, there are definitely things that we do to make it harder for ourselves. Like I've been in races and people are like complaining, and I'm like, wow, you have energy to complain. Like if you're really exhausted, you don't even want to talk. And so like if I want to make myself miserable in an endurance event, I will autoplay, this is so hard, this is so hard. No. So what I do is I go, this is easy. This is a cakewalk. This is so easy. And that, you know, it helps. It definitely doesn't make it harder. And so that helps. And I think one of the misconceptions about all of these doing hard things is like, you have to believe in yourself. No, you don't. You just need to try. Like thinking you need to believe is just another like expectation or pressure. You don't need to know if you can make it or not. You don't need to believe. You just need to show up and try. So who cares? Motivation, you don't need that either. You can start and feel unmotivated. And I mean, it's kind of like one of those things. The hardest part is getting your shoes on. And once you're there, it makes it easier. And I think for me, the hardest mile is the first one. And then the second one gets easier and easier. And then you're in a flow state. And yeah, not putting pressure on, you know, I have to feel motivated and I have to wake up like today's a Nike commercial. No, it's just really habit and not knowing that you don't have to have these strong, I can do anything, just try. So yeah, I think we can get caught in those things, and I certainly did. But I have a lot of humility for and respect for endurance, and knowing that there is no, I've done it enough to know that anything could happen and there's no guarantee. Even if I've run 100 miles a bunch of times, anything, I still have just so much respect for our body and the toll that these things take.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. And, Jesse Itzler is somebody, I've gotten to know. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's another ultra runner, but he's very much into endurance, and he helps a lot of people kind of overcome a lot of these things. And, he does these speeches, and I love this one part. He's talking about this race and his body was falling apart. His feet, were broken and just bleeding. And, he was running with this ex-Navy SEAL that he brought on because he kept hitting a runner's block at about 60 to 70 miles. And this ex-Navy SEAL, who's a strange looking guy, just said, hey, when we start feeling pain and we don't think we can go, what we're going to tell everybody at this stop up here, the emergency stop, is we're going to tell them the craziest thing is we don't feel any pain. Say that with me. we don't feel any pain. It's crazy. It's crazy. We don't feel any pain. And they just kept saying that throughout the whole race. Parallel that back to you. You've done ultras. You've rode across the Atlantic Ocean. Listen, like, sounds great. How much pain you must endure to do those. That was 70 days in a rowboat.
Yes.
Can we
So-
just talk about those moments where everything hurts so bad? You literally don't know whether you're alive or you're half dead. How do you get through those moments?
Yeah. So before that, I'm just going to give a little shout out for my friends called endorphins because they mask pain really well. They get me in the zone. And sometimes, like an Ironman or 100-mile runs, I feel more pain 2 or 3 days later once the party's over and all my endorphins are gone. So I think that that's one of the joys, like the runner's high. And you are just so, elevated by these feel good chemicals. And I mean, yeah, like you don't need to do these things pouting and crying, and it could actually be very joyful and you could be in a flow state. But like the row had this added element of I didn't sleep for like more than 2 hours, and either flying fish were hitting the side of my cabin, just the constant rocking, the fact that it was like a coffin sized cabin and it felt like a sauna. It was good for rowing. It wasn't good for cooking, cleaning, sleeping, anything else. So there was a moment at the halfway mark, and I was like expecting this happy feeling, right? Like usually halfway is a great moment in endurance because you could say, oh, I'm closer to the end than I am from the start. I know exactly what it's going to take to get there because I just did it. It's like, that's my experience of the first, reaching that halfway mark. And during the row, I was just like, oh no, because it was like I thought I gave it all. That's all I had. I don't know where that's going to come from. I gave it all just to get here. And it didn't help that I was probably one of the furthest humans on the planet from land at that point in the middle of the Atlantic. And so it was just like I just felt swallowed by the enormity of doing that. And I did bring some sleeping medicine to use as needed. At that point, it was gone. I had no guaranteed sleep at all. And so it felt bigger. It felt like, what did I get myself into? I mean, crying and everything. And so that's when I let go of 3,000. Like, I'm not rowing 3,000 miles. I'm going to row 1 mile. And when that's done, I'm going to row 1 mile. And so it was really like rowing 1 mile 3,000 times. And I mean, I couldn't even look at the big picture. I didn't even want, and just kind of going to the grind of like, okay, the next step. And yeah, you use little things like, I use comedians. I would listen to comedians as my treat at the end of the day, and Snickers bars or whatever I could do. But I don't know any other way but then to look at it as that one step. And truthfully, if you give your energy and attention to that next step and you are intentional about continuing to do that, the miles, the challenge, it will take care of itself. The result will take care of itself if you are very present and, giving what you have. But yeah, if you ever want to feel really overwhelmed, just like, I don't know, people are doing lots of things. If you're going to grad school, think about every single paper that you will have to write, think about all the tests you will have to take, how many hours. Like, we don't do that anyways. We do kind of take things one step at a time. And the more we can do that to the bigger things, it's, I think everything and anything is done in that one step process. So
I love that. 1 more mile, 3,000 more, but one more. I can relate to that. It just seems a lot easier to tackle 1 mile than 3,000. But yeah, it wasn't a thought that you were just this tiny little thing in the middle of this ginormous ocean. You really were. And I got to ask, like, was there like a rescue boat following you? I mean, at any time, could you have just said, I can't do this, and the boat would have just picked you up?
Yeah, I probably would have died. Let's be honest. I didn't have a follow boat.
You didn't have a follow boat at
Didn't have
all.
a helicopter. There was the ability to pay $30,000 to be part of a race, and I was a broke college kid that was more concerned about raising the money for charity. And so I just I had an emergency beacon. So so when I left in Africa, there was
gosh.
like a semester at sea. All these like high school students, they had this state of the art everything. And I got a text on my satellite phone that their boat was sunk by a rogue wave. That's what happens on the ocean. You could have rogue waves. You could be rowing along. There's, 3-foot waves, and then whoa, there's a 20-footer. Like that's a thing. And so their boat got overtaken, and it was just like, it took 2 days for them to be rescued. So realistically, I had emergency supplies, I had a backup water maker, I had survival gear. I wasn't going in, without some of that. But truthfully, and remaining tethered to the boat. I mean, I had to scrub barnacles on the side of the boat because that would drag and make me go slower. And so, yeah, you're never going into the water without the tether. But that was probably the hardest part about it, like going to the airport, seeing my family, and we had tears in our eyes, wondering if that would be the last time we'd see each other. I mean, yeah, so that was a heavy thing, but I would have had an emergency beacon, and by the time they got to me, if it was really like I needed help at that moment, they would have known where my boat was. I don't know.
Holy crap.
I
See,
think,
I just imagine that, of course, there's a boat following you. Nobody rows across the ocean in a rowboat, and everybody should just Google it. Like, it wasn't a big boat. I Googled it before this
No.
interview, and I'm just like, that's
Yeah.
what you rowed across the ocean. And the first thing I'm thinking, I'm a surfer. So like, I'm thinking, okay, 70 days in open water. There's no way in hell you're not going to endure a storm. It's just not going to not happen. So in every storm, you get big waves. So did that happen?
So I worked with a weather guy. We weren't going when there was stormy season, but we did know that on the coast of South America that it could get a little hairy. And so I did have 25-foot waves, and I am wired for excitement. And so I liked it. I was like, I want to see the full capabilities of my boat. Rowing was not good. Like, you had to time every single oar stroke very, carefully, because if I didn't and it got caught in a wave, it would mean I could break my ribs or my knees would be totally bruised. But like at that point, I had like, yeah, I'm not a conquer nature. If the ocean wanted me to be taken, I would in a heartbeat. Like, so I think it was just like, I love the intensity of weather, and I had enough trust in my boat at that point to know that it could withstand it. And that's what it was designed for. I mean, it was self-righting. It would flip back over again. I had safety belts, and it was all padded in the cabin so I wouldn't get a concussion if I got banged around. And so I mean, if you have a fast car and you don't drive fast, what's the point? And so I did have that. I did enjoy it. I felt like finally, rowing an ocean could be very exciting. It could also be extremely boring. Like, wow, there's birds, there's some dolphins, there's not much going on out here. So I did appreciate that. And wasn't doing stupid things, but I was just, yeah.
This is a really dumb question, but like, how did you, I know probably compass and probably even GPS stuff, but like, was there any times where you were off course and you were so tired it was hard to get back on course?
Yeah, so it would have been like 2,600 miles if it was straight. So yeah, there was definitely squiggles. I was being blown back towards Africa a few times. So I had a para anchor, which is like an underwater parachute that would hold the boat. And so
Okay.
you can't like anchor to the sea floor miles deep. but that was the best you could do. So yeah, there were times when I went to bed and it's like, oh, I lost everything. But then you tell yourself, well, you're still closer to the end if you wouldn't have rode at all. So I mean, I did go with the prevailing winds and currents. There's no way I would have been able to do it if I didn't do that. But I didn't worry about precision until the end. And I did have those bad conditions right as I was about to land. And so I knew that I would need a boat to tow me in. And I wasn't about that. I wasn't going to row thousands of miles and have a boat like, okay, pluck you to the end. So I did end up 2 countries west of my original destination. But
Oh, that's all. Just 2 countries west. No big deal.
yeah,
It's like you
I-
missed your exit twice.
you could do that, but like when people like I do get lost. I drive, sometimes I get lost. People are like, oh, you can navigate the open ocean. I'm like, what do you mean? You just go west and you eventually you'll hit land. You can look at the sun where the sunrise sets, east and west. That's all. There's no navigation. Like
Wow.
so yeah, I had enough food when I made that decision and I wasn't, I didn't have I think one of the greatest blessings as an athlete is not having overuse injuries. I've never had stress fractures. I've never really had like when I do get injured, I mean, but it's usually like, I broke my pelvis and I just tore my ACL, but it's not.
It's nothing. That's nothing.
It was-
Knee one directional joint, like just go rehab it. You'll be good. Modern science, I've done ACLs, but shoulder, now don't mess your shoulder up.
Oh, is that the worst?
It's the worst joint. It just never heals right. I've done both of mine and neither one's right.
Oh,
My
man.
knees though, I tore these suckers up plenty of times and they work just fine. You just keep them strong.
Oh, that's very encouraging. Yeah, I was doing a skate for water, so you can do endurance rollerblading, and that's what we did across the Florida Keys for a community in Haiti. So it was from Key Largo to Key West, across 44 islands, going down one of the bridges. The trail ended abruptly, and so I tore fully ruptured ACL, partially ruptured MCL, and sprained my wrist. But we
Oh.
still finished.
Wait, you continued on the ACL?
I did.
I guess that would be possible. Rollerblading, it would hurt like hell.
Well, I couldn't stop. So because you have to like tilt your toe up
Yeah.
or drag your skate, and neither of those would work without your ACL. So
But what about like when you were pushing with that leg, like that sideways push on a rollerblade? That had to have killed. Or were your endorphins just rocking and
Yeah.
rolling again?
I think I was in shock if I had to assess why I kept going, and adrenaline because but yeah, I wouldn't have been able to finish without my friend helping me stop. But I don't know. I do have like medical people. I think what's also worth mentioning is, no doctor is going to be like, yeah, I think you should run 100 miles. I mean, what I'm doing can be very dangerous. And I know that, I need to do things in a way that isn't causing long-term, like whether it's, you get rhabdo or, dehydration or heat stroke, or there's a lot of things that could go wrong. And so it can be very dangerous if you don't do things. And so, yeah.
What was your biggest lesson from rowing across the ocean?
I mean, really just that we're more capable than we think.
Good one. All right. So you're just a junkie for this stuff now. You love it, but you've got a bigger mission. And again, for all of you that heard me say it again, I'm going to transition again. H2O for life. Please give. It will come back, but don't think of that. Just give, because people need clean drinking water like you're able to have, and they deserve it more than the money in your pocket. So help the cause. $1. How much does $1 work out to be for them?
So every project is a little different, but around $50 is enough on average to help one person get clean water. And what H2O for Life also does is they don't just do water, they do hand washing stations and latrines, and also an educational component. So it's really a more holistic, approach, so that all of the components that make up this healthy drinking water exist.
Yeah. I mean, folks, just think about it, right? Just imagine waking up in the morning, you've got young kids, You want to make breakfast. So you grab a clay thing that will hold water and you walk a mile. And that'd probably be the shortest distance, but you walk a mile to a river where you fill this jug up with dirty water. You've all seen rivers. That you fill it up. You then put it on your shoulder or on your head and you walk back 1 mile. That water is what you use to cook for the day, clean for the day. The next day you get up, if that water lasted, and you do the same thing. Imagine having to do that every day for the rest of your life just to survive, just to make sure your kids can, have bathing water or drinking water or eat breakfast and dinner. Just think about that. Imagine if your $50 could change that for one family. Like, come on. Like, that's all it takes. Everybody thinks it takes such big amounts. It takes small amounts and a lot of hearts and a lot of people. That's what does it. So just give. And also too, if you guys want to learn more about this, check her book out. She's got this book, Just Keep Rowing. Just grab the book. It'll support her, because everything you do, not once have we talked about money. Now I know you've seen massive, fame in this. I mean, my gosh, I just mentioned a few of them, but the Joe Rogan experience, everybody knows that. But not only that, CBS Morning News, Sports Illustrated. I don't even know what that is, but might be a big thing. Think of that. And she's helped over 50,000 people gain clean drinking water. I mean, what a life's work. And I don't know how old you are, Katie, but you're young. Like, you're just getting warmed up. What's next?
The row was part of a bigger idea to go around the whole world by human power. So I would like to continue by cycling South America and continuing on that journey. But I'm active duty in the Coast Guard. So I'm still, until I retire, I'm going to do that and then get back to the bigger challenges. And so that will probably be a 3-year journey with the goal of helping 100,000 people all along the route.
That's so awesome. Yeah, it's going to be exciting to see what you accomplish next. I mean, it's just like some people would be like, how could you do more? Well, there's always more to do. There's always more to give. There's always more to dream and always more to imagine. So where does it stop? It doesn't, until you stop it, until you start conforming to other people's failed realities. Your reality isn't theirs, and your reality and your dreams can be whatever they want, just like Katie. So Katie, thank you so very much for coming on the show today. Again, I just want to point out, grab her book, Just Keep Rowing. And again, I don't know how many times I got to say it, in the description below or above, H2O for life. Just click it and don't think, just give. Katie, thank you
So much.
You're very welcome. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. We're putting up tons of them, but I think if you like this one, you'll probably like that video as well. Not only that, I've got a book that I created, Mapping Out the Millionaire Mystery, where we actually show you what the wealthy do in the game they play with money. I want you to have that for free. And if you want to know about all my new videos coming up, click that alert button. Actually, smash that alert button, and you'll be notified every time we put a new video. So we'll see you on the next episode.